Welcome back, warriors, where war never ends, insanity never lasts. Don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and brace yourselves, because from here on out there is only war. Let's go. You know, I've been working on various videos about actual lore, tabletop and whatnot, but since I released a video about Gilman and how much I like him, my Space Marine karma has been unbalanced because I said something positive about them. Or, well, about Primarch, but close enough. I must now say something negative about him. Plus, complaining is something that comes to me as easily as breathing. I am a fan of Warhammer after all, and we love nothing if not complaining about Warhammer. Additionally, a couple people in the comments were wondering why I dislike Space Wolves so much, which is fair. Everyone's tastes are different for a variety of reasons, and people can like the wolves. It's an opinion. As long as it's not something like supporting the Bretonnian, I can accept it. But that being said, allow me to make one thing very clear. I do not like the Space Wolves. In fact, I'm reasonably sure I hate the Space Wolves, and much like the Horse Diddlers, I think it's only fair I give 40K its own X Faction Sucks video, isn't one it? Ignore DIDT, his demons are in both games, what applies to both settings. Alright, buckle in fellas, it's time for me to and moan like an expert. Just a few things to clarify before we get going. 1, and please do keep this in mind, this is once again me giving an opinion. This is my point of view on the Space Wolves. That doesn't mean yours is wrong or that I personally think less of you for liking them. Got to hammer that home. This being the internet and all, if I specify after every sentence that I am giving you opinions, this video will be obnoxious as hell to listen to, so please mentally add the phrase pancreas no work. Is not only giving you an opinion, but primarily talks out of his ass rather than his mouth after everything I say. 2, it's mostly going to be 40K Space Wolves, not so much of the Horus Heresy. I'm not terribly knowledgeable on the specifics of the wolves during that time as a chapter. I know the gist of what they and Leo up to during that time, sure, but not much beyond that. Are we all good on all this stuff? Alright, sick, let's go. In fact, since I said I don't hate them nearly as much as the Bonian, how about some things I actually like about them first? To help even things out between us, Mr. or Mrs. Hypothetical Space Wolf fan. 1, I like Landruss. I've got no issues with him. Sure, he's a flawed character and kind of but perfect characters are boring. It's why I don't really care for Sanguinius all that much, aside from the red thirst and his, slight anger issues. He's too goddamn perfect. But Layman's brash, impulsive, and quite the hypocrite, while at the same time shows genuine care for his brothers in Legion. He's also pretty introspective at times, appreciating some of the stuff Lorger has written down, and regretting what he's had to do to his fellow Primarch. I mean, hell, he even tried to talk to Magnus before he burned Prosaro down. And he hated everything Magnus stood for. Once again, by the way, a reminder that Magnus did pretty much everything wrong. 2, the idea of space Vikings is rad. I mean, Vikings are cool as hell. They're Vikings. You see this horny bastard, he's ready to kick and ass, gum, and he's all out of kick. And the idea of Viking super soldiers, oh good god, please, more of that. And 40K is the perfect setting to have something like Space Vikings in it. Something so damn stupid but so cool. 3, the idea of a chapter of Space Marines pissing off the Inquisition and whatnot is great. I love the Inquisition, but more so as part of the setting than any particular love for them. A group of people going around blowing up planets as part of their job is wonderful for 40K. And I'm glad they exist. That being said, that's kind of an evil thing to do, even if you think it's a necessary evil. And a group of Asteris giving them a good kick in the balls every now and then is pretty nice to see. Finally, Lucas the Trickster's rule that used to let him just kill a Titan if he was close enough to it when he died. Phenomenally funny, nice warlord jackass. But consider that I'm stopping time for both of us now. But with that, I am mostly out of nice things to say, and I'm going to begin complaining. Let's start with the small fry, something everyone can agree is dumb. The constant naming of things after wolves. Space Wolves and their Wolfguard and Wolfen. And yet TTS already made the joke. But wolf, almost everyone hates it. Almost everyone hates those stupid helmets they got. That look like GW-sanctioned furbait. This is nothing new, but it's always going to be something worth bullying. Moving on to something substantial, man. They are a chapter of Mary Sue, aren't they? Matt Ward's Ultramarines were probably stronger than the Emperor, with the stuff they pulled off, with the Space Wolves aren't far behind. Let's start off with the months of shame. Like I said, the idea of kicking the Inquisition and their also holy balls is great. They shouldn't always get their way. And butchering your own soldiers because they fought demons is just silly. There wouldn't be Acadia left if the Imperium always did that. Logan Grimnar isn't a fan of this and other Imperial policies than Grey Knights, which surely must have affected the space. He's at least once in their 10,000-year history. But I guess now is the only time they felt like arguing about it. Grimnar and his wolves start blocking fire from inquisitorial ships, firing on refugee vessels, and even manage to hold themselves back from returning fire on the Inquisition when the Inquisition calls for a truce, where both sides show up with their weapons power down. The Inquisition naturally lied about this and immediately fires upon the wolves. So far so good. Nothing Mary Sue likes so far, and honestly, I commend the wolves for this good on them. And yet, after these nice points, the Space Wolves can seem to do nothing but get their way. When Logan arrives to the Inquisitorial flagship, he not only kills a Grandmaster of the Grey Knights before the guy can even draw his weapon, he and 3 of his honor guards shoot their way out of an Inquisition ship that had every intention of fighting them and escape. They just take the ship and sail their way back to Fenris. And after that, it doesn't get better, because when the Inquisition shows up for round 2 and attempts to blockade Fenris, the Space Flow show up with their ultra-massive fleet. They just have and fight them on mostly even terms. More Grey Knights are killed, the Inquisitor in charge is killed, and the Spaceys manage to hold the R against not only the entire Imperial fleet that the Inquisition mustered, not only a pretty respectable amount of Grey Knights, but an entire additional chapter of Space Marines. The Inquisition called in for backup because, aren't the wolves just so goddamn cool? It only ended when Bjorn, who as an aside actually quite likes so, I guess he's another thing I can tolerate about, the wolves teleported onto the ship. Logan was painting a lovely shade of corn red and told everyone involved to chill the hell out, and the end result of all of this was essentially Inquisition going, alright, we may be done, but we're gonna keep an eye on you. That's the end result of openly fist-fighting the Inquisition. Not a declaration that they're heretics, not another round of warfare. The Inquisition going, we will look into how to defeat the Space Wolves in the future. Like some reading of a company's financial report of the year, piss off. They should be rerouting ore cords to Phoenix every other day. Not going, you'll rue the day you damn wolves, and then leaving. Speaking of Cornred, did you know Logan has an axe with a cornate spirit inside of it? He just carries it around, no issues from it whatsoever, even when the explicitly cornate spirit inside of it was activated to help him punk on Magnus the Red. No problems holding it. You know, Mom, you can just do that, no corruptive influence or anything. Now Maris Calgar also has his gauntlets of Ultramar, which were reclaimed by Chilan from Chaos one day. But for one, those were reclaimed as in were once belonging to Loyalist, were captured by traitors, and then returned to Loyalist hands. Also, there's no demon inside of those things. Another example I'm going to use is Castle and Crow. He's got a demonic sword as well, and that thing actively tries to escape from him. The difference is the Castle and Crow is a Grey Knight of the Purifier variety. Grey Knights are constantly supposed to combat chaos, and are chosen for those who are not only physically worthy, but those who passed hundreds of grueling, excruciating tests to ensure that they would never fall to Ancient. Bars and Purifiers are those who are exceptionally pure amongst what I just described. That's the kind of Marine Crows by Didier Criches, and he's just barely able to contain his demon sword. Meanwhile, Logan's just walking around with the damn thing in the open, like his flies down, just waving in front of everyone's face. Like any halfway decent psyker isn't going to be able to sense the pure evil coming from the middle of his weapon. Given that 40K is 40K, by all rights, Logan Grimnar should be put down like the dog he is. Alright, let's go onwards. I can't keep talking about a weapon for 10 minutes straight. Radnar Black, I know I said wouldn't keep restating how this is all my opinion because it'd get annoying, but now I feel especially compelled to say that this is all my opinion because I haven't read his books. Most of them are by William King of Gotri and Felix Fame, so I'm sure they're pretty good. I hear he's got an asshole of plot armor in him, but I can't vouch for that. No, what I'm here to complain about is his Radnar fighting Gaz Cole and cutting off his goddamn head. Let's look at Gaz, and more importantly, his biggest rival in the Imperium, Commissar Yik, the best fight Gaz has ever been given, who was captured and let go solely because Gaz didn't want to waste such a good enemy by executing him as a prisoner. The man who is probably more responsible for Armageddon not living up to its name than any of the Marines present, who is loved because, while yes, he is a commissar, at the end of the day he's just a regular old guy who went toe-to-toe with the biggest orc in the galaxy and held his own. How did GW handle this relationship between these two arch-rivals? Oh well, they didn't handle it. Replace Eric some Space Marine, who gives everyone likes Space Marines, make it a wolf too. Why the hell not? Everything is Space Marines, and since it's not an Ultramarine, it's got to be a goddamn wolf right off. Admittedly, this may not specifically be a Space Wolf thing, but it was the wolves who were chosen to be the Marines to fight Gasol instead of Wake, and I'm bitching about the wolves. So it's going in here. Some rude priests had visions about the orcs doing some bad stuff to Fenris, so obviously it's time to get involved in another conflict, because the Space FS might be going through the aftermath of Magnus the Red using them like a fleshlight. But they can still afford to wage war against the single strongest orc in the galaxy. They're the Space Wolves. Of course, they can actually handle all of that and not just have it be empty bravado. It's the wolves, sure. Unlike the Smurfs, the Space Wolves don't have 500 entire worlds dedicated solely to backing them up. But they've got this. I mean, they're too cool to lose. How could they? You know what? Let's talk about those visions a bit, and the rune priests. Who had them? If you weren't aware, the Space Wolves say that their power comes not from the warp, the way other psychers do, but from the world spirit of Fenris, that instead of coming from chaos, it comes from their planet they love oh so very much, the bunch of hippies. And if I've read correctly, this has been more or less confirmed to have at least some amount of truth behind it, due to the wolves' belief in this being the case. Now, the idea of something like this happening is not what I'm opposed to. Belief in this setting, after all, is an almost tangible thing, And as for the hypocrisy of it, I admit it would be nice to see NP punch the walls and the balls overusing it, but Layman Russ himself did vow to have a long hard think about the Rune Priest in related matters after a talk with Malador, so at the very least someone at Games Workshop is self-aware enough to acknowledge the matter. Which I appreciate also. As I was editing this video together, I realized that was the third time this video that I made a joke about someone getting punched in the nuts. I don't know why, but during recording I had balls on the brain. Anyway, stupid space wall psychers, my issue comes from the fact that Fenris has its own spirit, because the walls and people of Fenris believe in it. There is absolutely no way in hell there are enough walls or Fenians, or whatever the hell those people are called, to generate their own spirits separate from the rest of the war. I don't care how full of themselves they are. They just shouldn't be able to do it. There's a few thousand space wolves compared to the trillions of trillions of trillions of other beings in the galaxy that do not give a about Fenris. The spirit of Fendra should have been drowned out in a sea of screaming psyker souls, but because the space FS are just so goddamn special, they alone can be reality enough to create basically their own warp to draw power from. And you know what? Maybe if their powers only worked on FIS I could accept it. Maybe it wouldn't make me so goddamn angry to think about. But no, Run Priests get the spirit of a single planet empowering them wherever they go. Go, what's that madness? You studied the war more than anyone but were still duped in becoming a slave to chaos. Oh, sorry about that, bud. You should have just believed in Prospero more. I guess what a skill issues. Am I right out, fellas? Madness the Red, more like Madness the big dumb stupid idiot owned. If this actually happened all the time, like it does for the wolves, there would be 500 different interpretations of the God Emperor running around. The Eldar gods would still be alive, because surely if the wolves can create their own spirit, each craft world can create their own gods again. I think what really pisses me off is that people complain about the greater good warp entity because the souls aren't as bright as other souls, which is a complaint at a vacuum is fair. But there are billions more TOA than there are people on Fenris. If the wolves can get away with this, there is no reason the TOA shouldn't be able to. The sheer number of them compared to the space wolves mean they should have no problem forming their own warp entity with the wolves being able to do so. But you know what? All of this, every single bit of lore here I could forgive if it weren't for one thing, one single solitary thing. The space wolves are not space Vikings. They might look like space Vikings. They might drink like space Vikings, but space Vikings they are not. They're Viking cosplayers at best because you know what the actual Vikings did? Trade with other nations, explore new lands and settle them, even if only temporarily, integrate themselves into other nations and empires. And the space wolves do none of that. There is no space wolf equivalent to those old Viking colonies in North America. There's nothing like a space wolf colony in the Ghoul Cool Stars that failed to prop up, but would have still been an incredibly interesting piece of lore. There's no space wolf company sailing across the galaxy to deliver goods from Venus, or any other extreme equivalent, to the Vikings' history being traders and merchants, as well as warriors. There are no expeditions to chart unknown sectors of space, and what kills me the most, what would have been such an incredible amazing piece of lore, it would make me forgive every single thing I've said so far single-handedly, is that they have no equivalent to the Varangian Guard. For a very brief historical breakdown, the Varangian Guard was an elite unit of the Byzantine Empire, or the Roman Empire if you want to be correct about it. It was primarily composed of who else but Scandinavians, aka Vikings, and they were the bodyguards of the Roman Emperor, and I don't care how a good 20% of the comments are going to be. This is heresy, worded slightly differently. Can you imagine how awesome it would be if there was a group of space wolves guarding an Eldar Farseer or a tow with Ariel? There's so much you could do with that, perhaps in a battle against Kates or the Tyranids. The wolves in one of the nicer Xenos factions were desperate allies to survive the conflict. When it was over, they went their separate ways, and over time this developed into a trading relationship. This eventually causes something resembling the Varangians to form with close ties between the chapter and the other faction, where the wolves will lend some of their elite to watch over them, or, if you want to go the grim dark 40K portraying humanity route, a group of wolves see the rest of their chapter picking fights with the Inquisition, as well as anyone who looks at them funny and just leads. I mean, I would, the hell with them. I'm joining a craft world. They probably got some wine to chug while I hang around and kill the occasion Tyranid. But no, we don't get any of this. Instead, we have a bunch of people who superficially look like Vikings, but they don't trade, they don't interact with other cultures. They just sit and drink and fight and win all the time, because they're just so awesome. They are at most to a Ghidorah of the Explorer version of Vikings. Hell, for a while they couldn't even recruit from planets other than Fenris. So them being a kick-ass Fangji and Guard ripoff had built-in lore reasons it couldn't work. I'll cut it here as much as I absolutely love complaining about factions. I dislike after a certain point it stops being entertaining and starts being annoying to listen to. Have I passed that point in this video? No, hope not, because that wouldn't be good now, would it? But either way, I hope you can now understand why I hate the wolves so much. Less hate-driven content to come soon. I'm pretty sure I'm out of factions that just piss me off. Besides, I've promised you all elves and dwarfs. I know some of you might disagree, and that's exactly what I'm looking forward to. Let me know what you think, and that's it. You've survived yet another video of mine. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment to let me know what you think. Or just rant about some filthy Xenos. That works too. That works.